Sarah had always been a creature of habit. Every evening after work, she would rush to catch the 6:15 p.m. bus that would take her back to her small apartment on the outskirts of the city. This was her routine, a routine that she cherished after long, tiring days at the office. The city streets were familiar, the faces of the people who shared her commute becoming as recognizable as the landmarks she passed by every day. It was a life of comfort and predictability, one that Sarah found solace in. But this evening was different. As she hurried down the bustling sidewalk, weaving through the throng of people, Sarah's mind was entirely focused on getting to the bus stop on time. She could already see the bus in the distance, its engine humming as it prepared to depart. Her pace quickened, her breath coming in short, determined gasps. She couldn't miss this bus. Not today. She had dinner to make, a list of chores waiting for her at home, and she desperately needed to unwind after a stressful day at work. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. A little girl, standing alone near a lamppost, clutching a teddy bear. The child's large, tear-filled eyes scanned the crowd, her small frame trembling as she clung to the stuffed animal. She looked utterly lost, and the sight of her stirred something deep within Sarah. She glanced back at the bus, which was now preparing to close its doors. She could still make it if she ran. But as she turned her gaze back to the little girl, a wave of empathy washed over her, and she knew there was no way she could leave without helping her. Sarah took a deep breath, abandoning her plan to catch the bus, and approached the girl. "Hi there," she said softly, crouching down to the child's level. "Are you okay? Are you lost?" The little girl looked up at her, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. She nodded slowly, her tiny voice barely audible. "I can't find my mommy," she whispered, her bottom lip quivering. Sarah's heart ached for the child. She gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, offering a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, sweetie. I'll help you find your way home, okay? What's your name?" "Mia," the girl replied, her voice still trembling. "That's a beautiful name, Mia," Sarah said warmly. "My name is Sarah. Do you remember where you live, or what your mommy's name is?" Mia shook her head, tears beginning to spill over her cheeks. I don't remember. I just know we were at the park, and then I couldn't find her." Sarah's mind raced. The park could be anywhere in this part of the city, and with dusk approaching, the streets were becoming busier, making it even more challenging to navigate with a lost child. But she couldn't leave Mia here alone, and she certainly couldn't wait for the authorities to arrive. Sarah made a quick decision. She would walk with Mia and try to find her home. "Okay, Mia," Sarah said, standing up and offering her hand to the girl. "Let's see if we can find your mommy together. We'll walk around for a bit, and maybe you'll recognize something. How does that sound?" Mia hesitated for a moment before placing her small hand in Sarah's. Together they began to walk, weaving through the bustling streets. As they walked, Sarah kept up a light conversation, trying to keep Mia's spirits up. She asked about Mia's teddy bear, complimented her on her pretty pink dress, and asked if she remembered what kind of house she lived in. Bit by bit, Mia started to open up, her tears slowly drying as she focused on the questions. "I think our house is white," Mia said after a while, her voice a little stronger now. "And there's a big tree in front. Mommy said it's a special tree because it's really old." "A white house with a big tree," Sarah repeated, trying to picture the description in her mind. It wasn't much to go on, but it was a start. She continued guiding Mia through the city, her eyes scanning every street they turned onto, searching for anything that matched the little girl's description. As they walked, the connection between them deepened. Sarah could see the trust growing in Mia's eyes, and she felt a protective instinct take hold. This little girl, so innocent and vulnerable, had no one else to rely on at this moment, and Sarah was determined not to let her down. Minutes turned into an hour, and the sky darkened as night began to fall. Sarah's feet ached, and her thoughts briefly wandered to her missed bus and the long walk she would have to make home. But every time she glanced at Mia, who was now holding onto her hand more tightly, she knew she had made the right choice. This was more important than any bus or any routine. They passed through a residential neighborhood where the streets were lined with trees and the houses stood silent under the dim streetlights. The area was peaceful, a stark contrast to the busy streets they had just left behind. Mia's steps began to slow, and she looked around with a hint of recognition in her eyes. I think we're close," Mia said, her voice filled with hope. Sarah felt a surge of relief. "That's great, Mia! Let's keep looking. We'll find your house soon, I'm sure of it." They continued walking, and after a few more turns, Mia suddenly pointed ahead. "There, that's our house. I remember now." Sarah followed Mia's gaze and saw a modest white house with a large old tree in the front yard. It stood quietly in the evening light, its windows glowing warmly from within. "Are you sure, Mia?" Sarah asked, feeling a wave of relief and a twinge of hesitation. Mia nodded vigorously. "Yes, that's where we live. Mommy's there, I know it." Sarah smiled, a sense of accomplishment washing over her. They had done it. They had found Mia's home. She led Mia up the walkway to the front door, where she hesitated for just a moment before knocking. As they waited, Sarah glanced down at Mia, who was clutching her teddy bear tightly, her eyes shining with excitement. But nothing could have prepared Sarah for what happened next. The door slowly creaked open, and as the person on the other side came into view, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened in shock and a lump formed in her throat. The figure standing in the doorway was someone she never expected to see again. Someone who would change everything in an instant. The journey home began with a sense of uncertainty. The city around them a maze of streets and alleys, each turn offering the possibility of recognition or the realization that they were still far from their destination. Sarah held Mia's hand tightly, offering both reassurance and guidance as they navigated the bustling city. The lights of the evening glowed softly against the gathering dusk, casting long shadows on the sidewalks where people hurried home, unaware of the quiet bond forming between the young woman and the lost child. As they walked, Sarah asked gentle questions, trying to piece together more details about Mia's home. "Mia, do you remember what your house looks like inside? Maybe something special in the living room or the kitchen?" Mia's little brow furrowed in concentration as she thought hard. "There's a big painting in the living room. Mommy says it's a picture of the ocean, but it looks kind of scary. And we have a blue couch. It's very soft. I like to sit there with Mommy and read stories." Sarah smiled at the thought of the small, cozy home Mia was describing. "That sounds like a lovely place. Do you remember the name of the street, or maybe something nearby?" Mia shook her head, her tiny hand clutching her teddy bear more tightly. "No, I just remember the tree in front. It's really old and has a swing. Mommy says it's been there for a long, long time." The more Mia described, the clearer the picture became in Sarah's mind. She could almost see the house now, a quaint, old-fashioned place with the warmth of a lived-in home. Yet with all the winding streets and similar houses in this part of the city, finding it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Still, Sarah pressed on, keeping her tone light and encouraging, even as her own anxiety began to build. They passed through a busy intersection, where the sound of car horns and the chatter of pedestrians filled the air. The city seemed larger than ever, its expanse almost overwhelming as Sarah realized just how small and vulnerable Mia was in this vast, indifferent world. A wave of protectiveness surged through her, pushing aside her worries about the bus, her tired feet, and the long evening still ahead. "We're going to find your home, Mia," Sarah said confidently, though the tension in her voice was subtle. "We'll keep looking until we do. You're not alone, okay?" Mia looked up at her, those big, trusting eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Sarah. I'm glad you're with me." Their walk continued, and gradually, Mia began to talk more about her family. She mentioned her mother often, a kind, gentle woman who loved to bake cookies and read bedtime stories. Mia's descriptions painted a picture of a warm, loving household, one that contrasted sharply with the cold, unfamiliar streets they were now navigating. "Mommy always makes the best cookies," Mia said with a small smile. "She lets me help sometimes, but I usually eat more of the dough than I should. And she reads me a story every night before bed. I miss her." Hearing the longing in Mia's voice tugged at Sarah's heart. She could sense the deep bond Mia had with her mother, and it made Sarah even more determined to reunite them. The thought of this little girl being lost, scared, and away from her mother filled her with a sense of urgency. "Your mom sounds wonderful, Mia. Sarah replied, her voice soft and soothing. "I'm sure she's worried about you too, but we're going to find her, and you'll be back home soon, safe and sound." The streets grew quieter as they ventured further from the city center, the bright lights giving way to the soft glow of street lamps and the occasional lit window in a passing house. The air was cooler now, and Sarah noticed Mia shivering slightly. Without hesitation, she shrugged off her light jacket and wrapped it around Mia's small shoulders. "Here, this will keep you warm," Sarah said, tucking the jacket snugly around Mia. "Thank you," Mia whispered, her voice full of appreciation. She hugged the jacket close, taking comfort in its warmth and in Sarah's kindness. As they walked, Sarah couldn't help but think of her own life, how she had been so focused on her job, her routine, and the small, everyday worries that seemed so significant until now. Helping Mia find her way home had shifted her perspective, making her realize that sometimes the most important things in life are the moments we take to care for others. It was a lesson she hadn't expected to learn on this ordinary day, and it filled her with a quiet sense of peace, even amid the uncertainty. The journey was not without its moments of anxiety, however. There were times when they would turn a corner, and Mia's face would light up with hope, only for her to shake her head in disappointment when she didn't recognize the surroundings. Each time, Sarah would offer a reassuring smile, hiding her own doubts and fears. They couldn't be far now, Sarah was sure of it. They just needed to keep moving forward. At one point, they passed a small park, the faint sounds of children playing echoing in the distance. Mia glanced at the park with a look of longing. "I like to play in the park near our house," she said softly. "Mommy and I go there a lot. There's a pond with ducks, and sometimes we feed them breadcrumbs." Sarah took note of this new clue, her mind working to piece together the possible locations they had passed. "Maybe we're getting close then," she said, more to herself than to Mia. "Let's keep an eye out for a park with a pond." The streets around them became more familiar as they entered a residential neighborhood. The houses here were modest, with well-kept lawns and the occasional flower bed adding a splash of color to the night. The trees lining the sidewalks swayed gently in the evening breeze, their leaves rustling softly, a peaceful contrast to the bustling city they had left behind. As they walked, Sarah began to notice more signs that they were on the right track. Mia's descriptions of her home, the tree, the park, the old-fashioned houses, seemed to match this area. Sarah felt a glimmer of hope, her heart quickening with anticipation. They were getting closer. She could feel it. Suddenly, Mia's pace slowed and she tugged on Sarah's hand, her eyes widening with recognition. I think we're almost there," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Sarah looked around, her gaze following the direction of Mia's pointed finger. In the distance, she saw it, a large old tree, its branches heavy with age, standing proudly in front of a small white house. The swing Mia had mentioned hung from one of the tree's sturdy limbs, swaying gently in the evening breeze. "That's it, Sarah! That's my house!" Mia exclaimed, her face lighting up with joy. Sarah's heart soared with relief and happiness. "You did it, Mia! We found your home!" They hurried toward the house, Mia's steps quickening with eagerness. As they reached the front yard, Sarah could see the warmth and light emanating from the windows, the glow of a home filled with love and comfort. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Despite the long journey, the missed bus, and the worries, they had made it. But as they approached the front door, a sudden wave of nerves washed over Sarah. What if Mia's mother was worried sick? What if she was angry? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the fact that Mia was safe and about to be reunited with her family. With a deep breath, Sarah knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the quiet night. Mia clutched her teddy bear tightly, her eyes shining with anticipation. They waited for what felt like an eternity, though it was only a few moments before they heard footsteps approaching from inside. The door creaked open slowly, and as the figure behind it came into view, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her heart skipped a beat, her eyes widening in shock. She wasn't prepared for what she saw, and the sight of the person standing there made tears spring to her eyes. There in the doorway stood someone she never expected to see, a person from her past, someone who had been lost to her for so long. And what they held in their arms made Sarah's emotions overflow, the weight of the journey and the unexpected reunion crashing over her all at once. Sarah's heart pounded as she knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the quiet night. The large, ornate house in front of them was exactly as Mia had described, beautiful and imposing, with tall windows glowing softly in the evening light. The reality of the moment hit Sarah all at once. After what felt like an endless journey, they had finally reached Mia's home. Relief washed over her, mingling with a strange sense of unease that she couldn't quite place. Mia stood beside her, holding her teddy bear tightly, her eyes filled with a mixture of anticipation and worry. The journey had been long and tiring, but Mia had been brave. Now, as they stood at the doorstep of what should be a safe and familiar place, Sarah couldn't help but feel a deep, inexplicable connection to the little girl. The sound of footsteps approaching the door pulled Sarah from her thoughts. She took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever lay ahead. The door opened slowly, and Sarah's world tilted on its axis as she came face to face with someone she never expected to see. A woman whose presence was like a ghost from her past. Sarah. The voice was soft, hesitant, but there was no mistaking it. The woman standing before her was none other than Emily, Sarah's estranged sister. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Sarah felt as though the ground beneath her feet had vanished, leaving her suspended in a surreal, dreamlike state. Emily? Here? How could this be possible? Her mind raced, trying to process the shock of seeing her sister after so many years of silence and separation. Emily? Sarah's voice was barely more than a whisper, choked with emotion. Her eyes filled with tears as she struggled to comprehend the situation. This was her sister, her own flesh and blood, standing in front of her after years of unresolved anger, hurt, and distance. Emily looked just as shocked as Sarah felt. Her hand trembled slightly as she gripped the door, her eyes wide with surprise and a touch of apprehension. Sarah, what are you doing here? Her voice was laced with disbelief and confusion, her gaze flickering between Sarah and Mia. Sarah couldn't find the words to respond. Her emotions were too tangled, too raw. The years of estrangement, the unresolved pain and longing, all came crashing down on her in that moment. She had spent so many years trying to bury the memories, trying to move on from the past that had torn them apart. But now, standing in front of Emily, all those old wounds were ripped open once again. Mia, sensing the tension in the air, looked up at Sarah, then at Emily, her innocent eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Auntie Sarah, is this your sister? Auntie? The word struck Sarah like a physical blow, her breath catching in her throat. She turned to look at Mia, her eyes widening in realization. Auntie? That meant... Sarah's knees nearly buckled as the truth hit her with the force of a freight train. Mia was her niece, Emily's daughter, the little girl she had been helping, the child she had bonded with so deeply on their journey, was her own flesh and blood. A sob escaped her lips as the weight of the revelation crashed over her. You're... my niece? Sarah's voice was thick with emotion, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked down at Mia. The little girl nodded slowly, her expression a mix of uncertainty and trust, as if she was trying to understand the complex emotions swirling around her. Emily's eyes filled with tears as well, her hand covering her mouth as she struggled to hold back her own emotions. Yes, Sarah, Mia is my daughter, she said, her voice trembling. I never thought I'd see you again, but here you are, and you've been helping her. The reality of the situation hit Sarah like a tidal wave, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She had spent so many years feeling hurt and betrayed by her sister, so many years of silence and bitterness, only to find herself reunited with Emily through this twist of fate. And now, standing here with Mia, she felt a deep sense of connection and love that she hadn't expected. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she looked at Emily, her heart aching with both joy and sorrow. Emily, I don't know what to say. I never knew you had a daughter. I've missed so much. Emily nodded, her own tears flowing freely now. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant for things to turn out this way. I didn't know how to reach out to you after everything that happened. And then life just kept moving forward. The pain and regret in Emily's voice mirrored Sarah's own feelings. So much time had passed. So many years lost to anger and misunderstanding. But now, standing here together, with Mia between them, the past seemed to dissolve into the background, leaving only the present moment and the possibility of healing. "I've missed you, Emily," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I've missed you so much." Emily's face crumpled as she reached out to pull Sarah into a tight embrace, the years of distance and pain melting away in the warmth of their reunion. "I've missed you too, Sarah," Emily sobbed, holding her sister close. "I've missed you so much." Mia, standing between them, looked up at the two women with wide, innocent eyes, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Does this mean we're all a family now?" Sarah and Emily pulled back from their embrace, both women smiling through their tears as they looked down at Mia. "Yes, sweetie," Emily said softly, her voice filled with warmth and love. "We're a family." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. "We're a family," she echoed, reaching out to gently stroke Mia's hair. The realization of their newfound connection filled the air with a sense of hope and possibility. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring them back together, to heal the wounds of the past and offer them a chance at a new beginning. The three of them stood in the doorway for a moment, the weight of the past lifting from their shoulders as they embraced the present. The pain and hurt that had once defined their relationship seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a deep sense of love and understanding. "Come inside," Emily said finally, her voice soft and filled with emotion. "There's so much we need to talk about, so much to catch up on." Sarah nodded, a smile breaking through her tears. "I'd like that." As they stepped into the warmth of Emily's home, Sarah felt a sense of peace settle over her. The journey that had begun with a missed bus and a lost little girl had led her back to the one person she had never stopped loving, her sister. And now, with Mia by their side, they had a chance to rebuild what had been broken, to create new memories and forge a new path together. The house was filled with the comforting sounds of home, the ticking of a clock, the crackle of a fire in the hearth, the soft rustle of curtains in the evening breeze. Sarah looked around, taking in the details of Emily's life, the life she had been absent from for so long. There were photos on the walls, pictures of Mia as a baby, of Emily smiling and happy, of moments Sarah had missed. But as she stood there, surrounded by the warmth and love of her sister's home, Sarah knew that the past was behind them. What mattered now was the future, and the chance they had been given to start anew. Mia, her little hand still clutching Sarah's, looked up at her with a smile that melted Sarah's heart. "Auntie Sarah, can you stay for dinner?" Sarah smiled down at her niece, her heart swelling with love. "I'd love to, Mia." As they sat down together at the dinner table, Sarah felt a sense of belonging that she hadn't felt in years. The pain of the past was still there, but it was overshadowed by the joy of the present, by the knowledge that they had been given a second chance. As they ate, talked, and laughed, Sarah realized that this moment, this simple, everyday moment, was what she had been missing all along. It wasn't the grand gestures or the big events that mattered, but the small, meaningful moments spent with the people you love. And as the evening wore on, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. A chapter filled with love, forgiveness, and the promise of a brighter future. The soft glow of the evening light filtered through the windows as Sarah and Emily sat in the cozy living room, their voices low and filled with emotion. Mia was curled up on the couch, her eyes growing heavy as the events of the day caught up with her. The house, which had once been a place of solitude for Emily, now hummed with the warmth of family, a warmth that had been missing for far too long. For a moment, the two sisters sat in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The air was thick with the unspoken words and unresolved emotions that had built up over the years of their estrangement. But now, sitting together in the same room, they both knew it was time to confront the past, to finally have the conversation they had avoided for so long. Sarah was the first to speak, her voice soft but steady. "Emily, I'm so sorry for everything that happened between us. I've spent so many years trying to bury the pain, but it's always been there, just beneath the surface." Emily looked at her sister, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. "I'm sorry too, Sarah. I never wanted things to end up this way. I've missed you so much, and it hurt every day that we weren't in each other's lives. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of the past. Both women knew that their estrangement had been born out of misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and a stubborn refusal to reach out when it mattered most. But now, with Mia as the bridge between them, they realized how much they had lost and how much they had to gain by mending their relationship. Sarah took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. I know we can't change the past, but I want to understand what happened. I want to know what you've been through, Emily. Maybe if I'd known, things would have been different. Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes as she began to share her story. After we lost touch, life became really difficult. I made some bad decisions, and I was too ashamed to reach out to you. I thought you'd moved on, that you didn't need me anymore. She paused, her voice trembling as she continued. But then I found out I was pregnant with Mia, and everything changed. I knew I had to be strong for her, but it wasn't easy. I struggled a lot, especially after her father left us. There were times when I didn't know how we would make it, but Mia gave me the strength to keep going. Sarah listened intently, her heart aching for her sister. She could hear the pain in Emily's voice, the loneliness and fear she had carried for so long. And as Emily spoke, Sarah realized just how much they had both suffered, how much they had missed out on because of their pride and stubbornness. I'm so sorry, Emily, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. I should have been there for you. I should have tried harder to stay in touch, to be a part of your life. I've been so focused on my own hurt that I didn't see how much you were going through. Emily reached out, taking Sarah's hand in hers. It wasn't just your fault, Sarah. I pushed you away too. I was so caught up in my own problems that I didn't see how much I needed you. But now, after all these years, I'm ready to let go of the past. I don't want to waste any more time being apart. Sarah squeezed her sister's hand, tears streaming down her face. Me too, Emily. I want us to be a family again. I want to be there for you and Mia, and I want you to be a part of my life. We've lost so much time, but we can still make up for it. Mia, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, sat up and looked at her mother and aunt with wide, innocent eyes. Does this mean we're all going to be together now? Like a real family? Emily smiled at her daughter, her heart swelling with love. Yes, Mia, we're going to be a real family again. Auntie Sarah is going to be a big part of our lives from now on. Mia's face lit up with joy, and she threw her arms around her mother and aunt, pulling them into a tight hug. I'm so happy. I've always wanted a big family. The embrace was warm and filled with love, a tangible symbol of the new bond that was forming between them. For the first time in years, Sarah and Emily felt a sense of peace and closure, a feeling that the wounds of the past were finally beginning to heal. As the night wore on, the three of them sat together, talking and laughing, sharing stories and memories that had been locked away for too long. There were tears, yes, but there was also a sense of hope and renewal, a belief that they could overcome the past and build something beautiful together. The conversation turned to the future, and Sarah and Emily began to make plans for how they would stay connected, how they would support each other, and be there for Mia as she grew up. There was so much to catch up on, so much to rebuild, but they were both committed to making it work. We've lost so much time, but I'm so glad we found each other again, Emily said, her voice filled with emotion. I don't want to lose you again, Sarah. I want us to be there for each other, no matter what. Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with tears. We will be, Emily. I promise you that. We're sisters and nothing can change that. We're stronger together, and I'm not going anywhere. Mia, nestled between them, smiled contentedly. She could feel the love and warmth radiating from her mother and aunt, and it filled her with a sense of security and happiness that she had never felt before. As the evening drew to a close, Sarah and Emily walked outside to the porch, looking out at the stars that dotted the night sky. The air was cool and crisp, filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant rustle of leaves. It was a peaceful, serene moment, a moment that felt like the beginning of something new and beautiful. We've come a long way, haven't we? Sarah said softly, her eyes fixed on the stars above. We have, Emily agreed, her voice filled with quiet reflection. And we still have a long way to go, but we're going to get there together. Sarah smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Together, she echoed, knowing that this time, it was a promise they would keep. They stood there in silence for a while, the weight of the past finally lifting from their shoulders. The night was still, and in that stillness, they found a sense of peace and resolution that had eluded them for so long. As they turned to go back inside, Mia was already asleep on the couch, her little face peaceful and content. Sarah and Emily looked at her, their hearts swelling with love and pride. "This is what it's all about," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "Family, love, being there for each other." Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, this is what it's all about." And with that, they knew that the future was bright, filled with love, hope, and the promise of a new beginning. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the story and share any themes or ideas you'd like to hear in future stories. Your feedback means the world to me. Thanks for watching.